So, hi everybody. Then we are back and we are starting in on our last live stream contribution for today. And I have Imme Gerke here, and I met Imme and her husband Jack about a year and a half ago at probably one of the most, like, for me, it was one of the most transformative weekends of my life, and I'm not exaggerating. This was a weekend spent in the Harz Mountains in Germany, and it was a 2.5-day conference. And yeah, and I could spend 45 minutes talking about the conference. I'm not going to. I'm so happy that Imme, that I got to meet both of you, and yeah, and it's led to, you know, you being here as well, and just talking to all of us about what you're doing. And we'll be talking about a word like cross-culture, which is something that was completely new for me. I had no idea what to do with this word, and but in the next half an hour to 45 minutes, we'll be learning a lot more about that. I think it's extremely important, and it has to do with global citizenship education, transformative education, and everything that we're doing over this 3.5 days. So, Imme, take it away. It's all yours.
Will do. Thank you, Nick. And thank you for inviting me in here. It's kind of weird not to see you guys. I'm not even sure there is anybody other than Henry and Nick, but I take your word for it. If you have any questions, I understand that you have access to the chat box and that Nick also sees that. So please use it, and he will be reading out your questions then, so I can answer them. I will be talking in pictures, almost only in pictures, I must say. The pictures you see here is just my life, and it's complex, and I don't want to talk about that for so long. So I have created a different slide. Come on, move. I don't mean Nick. So I hope you can see that. Yes, Henry gives me the thumbs up. He says he sees it. So I'm a biologist, and I did a PhD in cell biology and in behavioral biology. So you see, I take the whole range, right? And today it will be more about the behavioral part. After that, I went to Africa as a scientific aid worker. I developed biopesticides. That means I developed the products, the manufacturing methods, and the application methods. But I also did a lot of community development in terms of education and healthcare. After that, for different reasons, I went to Canada and the United States, created my own company, again in biopesticides for agriculture. Was product development, again, manufacturing, you can imagine, marketing and distribution. Yes, you need to sell the product, and then product application. Now, oh yeah, there I can see it too. After that, I became a government advisor for the Canadian government, the American government, the Mexican government. So all this was under NAFTA, if that says anything. For the EU, so from Canada for the EU, and then the OECD countries. Nowadays, I'm still a government and industry advisor, but I'm back in Europe because I really want to work worldwide, which means I do not receive my salary anymore from the government, but from the people who hire me. I'm a mother of 5 and a grandmother of 5 and a wife of 1. Yes, that's still the way it works. And today it's about my activity as a cross-culture moderator. And so here comes the word, cross-culture, with the question, what is it? It is something that means you. Here you just see the European countries. The title for today was 2000 cultures, right? So in Europe, we don't have quite 2000 cultures. Here you have the world map, and you still only see 200, not 2000. But in the individual countries, you have many different cultures. So for example, Canada has 24 different First Nations. Navajo, Haida, Algonquin, Mi'kmaq, Cree, and all those. Africa, very many different cultures. India, China, many different cultures. So this is where the 2000 come up. In that context, the old approach that we have of living monocultural, and yes, this is the German way of writing it, sorry, but you can still understand it. Monocultural, first we were just separated by deserts and oceans and mountains and you name it. But then we started moving and we became higher in number. And then some people came up with the idea to create fences and walls. I wish they wouldn't have done that, but cannot turn the time back. They did. And yet people crossed fences and walls and started sharing common living space. So people from different cultures shared one space. I think this is the reality still in many parts of Europe, also in many parts of the world, but definitely in Europe. People kind of live side by side in parallel societies. And then you come to multicultural 2, which is when people start learning from each other. And please focus on the heads now, not on what the people are wearing, but just focus on the heads. People gather experience from what they observe other people doing. And this is not just food, but also how to greet each other, how to dress, what kind of religion do they live. So bits and pieces. And then comes the next step, and that is cross-culture. And please, again, look at the heads. That's the focus now. In cross-culture, people have created a personal mosaic of the different pieces they have collected from the up to 2,000 cultures in the world. So if everybody in the world nowadays would be cross-culture, we would have close to 8 billion cultures, not 2,000, but 8 billion, because in cross-culture, everybody builds his or her own. Now, we don't get to decide in which direction it goes, right? We are born into the one situation or into the other. Our children, our parents, our grandparents, our neighbors, families as such, family friends, teachers, they drive our socialization. So that can go into multicultural, or we might be pushed into monocultural, and we will look in a moment in how that works, or we can be led to cross-culture. So I led my children to cross-culture, although I myself was socialized monoculture. So I did the whole path from mono over multi to cross. How does that work? So for you not to think that this is an egg, which it is not, I put a smiley on. Now I will take it away because it's supposed to be this head we have been looking at. At the beginning, we were conceived, but already inside our mother, we started collecting experience. And the experience just came at us. First, it was just our mother breathing, or the intestines gurgling, or mom sitting up, or mom laying down, or mom hopping up and down the stairs. So all this affected us. After birth, it continues on. Continued in that case. And if we were born into a monocultural society, then our experience would all be, for example, blue. And the result is somebody who thinks and acts blue, monocultural. Oh yeah, and I should have corrected that word because that again is German. So nowadays, that people are raised monocultural, only make monocultural experience is rather rare. People travel, we have neighbors from around the world, we look TV, we are on the internet, we are on social networks. So our experience is actually quite colorful nowadays. We make experience, we gain knowledge from all cultures around the world. We might not necessarily know where they belong, but when we look at pictures and we see people doing things, then often it seems familiar. So this gives us then what would be called multicultural 2. From multicultural 2, if we are now socialized very strict, that means our parents and teachers and neighbors tell us, no, 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 we don't do this. No, no, here where we live, we don't do this. Stop this behavior, don't do this. Then we still get to monocultural. However, this is not a comfortable place to be because we do remember. We remember the things we have tried. And you might not remember things you did as a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, but somewhere in you, there is the memory. And that affects us. That creates scars in our emotional well-being. And I must say, you'll probably hear that in my voice, I'm quite concerned about that. So let's look at a different possibility that I call letting go. So when your parents or teachers or neighbors don't really know what to do with you and the diversity you are growing up with, and they just leave you at this, then that leads to a very excited situation. And that is what I'm trying to say here with these flashing dots. That means when things happen, for example, like now, Corona or climate change, all the things that are really happening to us and that we alone cannot control, there's a lot of excitement, not a lot of stability, and that's not comfortable. So if instead of that, we are socialized to become cross-culture, then we have people who help us in our development. And I'm trying to show that here in moving the dots. That means people help us to understand. People ask, oh, where did you see that? Oh, and how did it feel? Oh, do you want to do this? And what happened after you tried it out? And how do you feel about that now? So with all this reflection and sorting, people create their own cross-culture. Cross because it contains many, many, many different cultures. Now, what you see here would be the cross-culture of an older person, because you can see it has very, very many little pieces that all have somehow found their place. There's two types of cross-culture individuals. There are the CCKs, that is cross-culture kids, people who were raised like this. And then there's the CCAs. I'm a CCA, I'm a cross-culture adult. I was already an adult when I received cross-culture training. So what would that mean for an individual person? And I just have to move something here. Okay. So let's say you're born in Germany and are very much limited to the German experience. Then over time, people start locking in. They are nervous about what comes at them from the outside. And yeah, here it should work now. Okay. If, however, now you start, and at any time in life you can do that, start taking away those, what was seen as a defensive wall and turned into prison bars. If you manage to take them away, then you're open to a new experience. So, for example, you might get exposed to Italian culture, and that would turn you then into an Italian German. Now, you see, Italian German, there is internationally, there is a rule how you do that. The last word, in this case German, is always the place where you live. And everything that is in front are the cultures from which you collected the pieces for your own mosaic. So you could be an Italian German, or you could be a Syrian German, or you could also be a Namibian German. I think I have one more example. Oh, yes, we have a Turkish German. And then it can become really complex, because if you get exposed to many different cultures, then this person, for example, would be a Turkish, Italian, Namibian German. Or I take myself, my experience, the countries from which I collected my pieces, and I'm a Swiss, Malagasy, Burkinabe, Canadian German. And before I came back to Europe, I was a German, Swiss, Malagasy, Burkinabe, Canadian, because I lived in Canada. So all these things, they are in principle, you know, for science, they're already very clear. They are well understood and defined. The goal must be now to move it over to everybody in society, including you guys. So this long thing, right? The Swiss, Malagasy, Burkinabe, Canadian German. I mean, nobody listens to me that long when they ask where I'm from. So typically what I'm just saying, I'm a cross-cultural individual. And what I mean is this. Now, in many countries of the world, people understand when I say that. In many countries, they don't. So and then I have to explain. And then I explain that there are cross-cultural individuals and cross-cultural European. We do have the Italian, German, European, right? We are talking here about Europe. So apply the whole system for Europe. Tomorrow during the workshop, we'll be doing it. Anybody attending will be doing this for him or herself. They are the Turkish, German, Europeans. And look at this one, the Italian, Namibian, Turkish, German, European. So there you know, yes, living in Europe, and within Europe, living in Germany. And there's again me, and this is pretty long. Okay, how does that feel? What happens? We know now, you know, is the mosaic put together and you get the pieces from, and why is that important? But how does it feel? At the end of the day, that's what matters. And so here I have an example. It's a story that actually happened like this. So it's not a story, it's a real event. Those were Afghani refugees who had come to Germany, a family, and they have been living in a tent for about 1.5 years. And then they got their first apartment. And they had a German lady who helped them finding their way through the different official paperwork and taking the kids to school and medical things and German lessons and all this. And then eventually when they got the apartment, that lady thought, oh man, they're going to have a real kitchen. And here's what they're going to do. They take a pot and a pan, and then they put something in it, and then they heat it, and then they cook. And then the result is a meal. The Afghani mother of the family, she saw this. Oh, finally a way to make flatbread, like at home. Not any more food from the mass kitchen, which we didn't really like to begin with, but I will be cooking healthy, good food for the family, which is what she did by putting the flatbread on the stove. Now, she did that for about 3 or 4 weeks and then invited the German lady to come over and show her the apartment, show her the kitchen, invite her for dinner, say thank you, all these things. This lady walks through the apartment, looks at one room after the next, comes into the kitchen, sees the flatbread on the stove. So she rushed in, ripped the bread from the stove, closed the heat, started wiping the whole stove. And the lady of the house, the Afghani mother, she just stood there in total shock. She had prepared this wonderful celebration, and now the guest just ripped it all apart. So both women were in no shape anymore to have a common dinner. The German lady left and was totally convinced, see, this diversity thing and multicultural thing cannot work. And the Afghani lady felt absolutely insulted by being treated this way. Now, in reality, both were right. For some meals, like cooking chickpeas, or what else do we have there? The falafel. You do need a pot. You do need a container. Yes, you do. But for flatbread, you don't. It's the perfect, those new stoves that we have nowadays, they are the perfect surface to do that. And yet both were totally stressed and miserable. Nowadays they are talking again, so that's okay. So if we now look at what happens to a monocultural, a multicultural, or a cross-cultural person when they get exposed to such a situation. The monocultural person, and that was the German lady, for her, it's just shock. A shock like if you look into the mirror and somebody smashes the mirror. Just imagine it, close your eyes a second, imagine it happening. That is a shock. It's highly uncomfortable. For a multicultural person, I compare that to this pressure cooker. So when they experience such a thing, they can actually pick up quite a lot, cope with quite a lot, but get more and more excited over time. So they probably could have coped with the flatbread, but then, you know, don't let too many other things happen. It's like a pressure cooker that receives more and more heat, right? And first starts whistling a little and then starts hissing. And if you don't take it off the heat, it explodes. Now, the reality nowadays is that our pressure cooker will not be taken off the heat. It won't. We're experiencing more and more new things. We're talking about globalization and digitalization and climate change and now Corona, and the next thing is probably waiting around the corner. So this is better than monocultural, but still it doesn't give us structure and security, inner security. Now, if you are cross-culture, and here you really have to look, because I put a triangular hole into the mosaic. So in such an event, like with a flatbread, yes, that mosaic gets damaged. Absolutely. It's not that you don't care anymore. It does affect you. But it is not your mosaic that collapses. It's just a part of the mosaic that has a hole. And this part you can fix. And then you can fit it in. And over a lifetime, it changes your own mosaic. It constantly changes. There is no final. So what's happening in the people is this. Now comes the behavioral biologist.
Imme, before you move on, I like that picture so much of like the pressure cooker. And as a teacher, then my very first thought was, oh, that's school for
Yes.
me. It seems like to me that's a very typical school in Germany anyway.
Yes.
We put it all together several hours a day, and we kind of just see what happens, and it can go really well, but not necessarily. And I'm
Yes.
just kind of wondering if that's something, maybe you just bring it up later. Maybe it doesn't fit right now, but I was just kind of thinking like I was like, we should be using that situation
Yes.
and direct it more, or make sure it's ending more positively, or,
Yeah.
or ending in cross-cultural.
Yes. And that's exactly why I wish all teachers had cross-cultural training. First of all, so that you can deal with what's happening in the classroom, but also so that you can support the students in dealing with what happens in the classroom. And third, so that you can understand the students that are already cross-culture, because you do have CCKs in your classroom. Not many. So I was in Canada for many years. So the number, the percentage of cross-culture kids in Canada is way higher than here in Germany. But that would really be a nice start with the teachers. So why is all this so important? And science has explanations from all directions. So there's neurophysiology, and there's brain science, there is psychology, there is anthropology, there are all the ologies, and they all explain what happens. Now, what I have picked today is the behavioral part of it, which is obviously the part I like the most. So we are all born with an inner aggression. It's part of life. Humans, animals, plants, bacteria, we all have this inner aggression. What is meant with that is that we absorb air and we release CO2. We drink, we eat, we pick up space, we grow, we reproduce. All these things, this is what is meant with inner aggression. If we wouldn't have this inner aggression, we wouldn't drink, we wouldn't eat, we wouldn't grow, we wouldn't live. So this is how it fits together. Now, on the other side, and that's obviously why it's a scale, it's a balance, right? Clearly something would come, are the aggression inhibiting mechanisms. Now, what are those? We are born with some aggression inhibiting mechanisms, and I'll show you a few later, but most of them are learned. And as they are learned, they are different from culture to culture. So if as a person, I learn as many aggression inhibiting mechanisms from all kinds of cultures I get access to, that's good for me. And it's also good for others. Why? Because this way of being is only one way of being. And I think you can see that these are not very comfortable. And then there's this way of being, of people, of humans, and they are comfortable. That means we need each other, we want each other, we enjoy each other's company, we love each other. This is human. So I told you that I would be showing you some aggression inhibiting mechanisms. Here is one. What happens on this picture is partly what you are born with and partly what you have learned. So you are born with the urge to greet people when you meet them. When you meet somebody, you have the urge to send the signal, okay, I'm not going to harm you. I'm not going to be mean to you. You know, I'm friendly, I'm nice. And you hope to get the same reply of, I will not hurt you either. I will be nice. I will be friendly. Now, we are not saying all this, but we are using signals. And in this picture, the signal is learned. It's the handshake. So the urge, I want to greet you and I need you to greet me, we are born with. By the way, we are born, not only we are born with it, primates, you know, chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, baboons, dogs, cats. We are all born with this urge for greeting, this aggression inhibiting mechanism. But different ways of doing it. We can greet like this, or we can greet like the Americans, or we can greet like the Japanese or the French. We can do the hand kiss. We can do it like the Maori in New Zealand. We can greet like people in India do, very good in Corona times. We really did not need to start greeting with elbows and feet and things like that. We could simply have learned from other cultures. Here's again the advantage of being cross-culture. We can rub our noses together for greeting. And yes, this is greeting too. Greeting in Bhutan. And just about this, we could talk an hour because people nowadays understand where this form of greeting comes from. So different forms of greetings. Let's say we are raised only with one or two forms of greeting. And the others for us, either we have never seen them at all, or they feel awkward because we never did it. Then what happens is culture shock. Oh yes, and I should have changed this into English as well. In this case here, somebody forgot to tell Mr. Bush that when you French kiss, I mean this cheek to cheek, you know, you do not really put your lips on the cheeks of the other, but it's just cheek by cheek. So in this situation right now, the lady has a culture shock because she didn't expect his lips on her cheek. And he would have a culture shock now if she would say what she just thinks, which she probably doesn't, considering that's the President of the United States. Those people down there, the two of them, made an effort, gave way to the urge of greeting, grabbed two different signs, but understand each other. They're friendly, they're relaxed, the greeting effect takes place. So really good idea to know more than one way of greeting. And then look at this situation. I do not know if you remember Berlusconi. I still do. So Berlusconi, the guy who had his hands on women whenever he could. I do not know if that's still the case. And Michelle Obama, who would normally hug, the American way of greeting. No, not with Berlusconi. She stretches her arm out as long as she can, the German way, and look at her arm. I mean, there's no way she could have made it any longer. And then if you look at Barack's face, I mean, it tells, right? Are you guy going to respect my wife or are you not? So there's a lot going on in greeting. I think, yeah, I still have about 10 minutes, right? And that's good. That fits.
Yeah, that's right. 10 minutes is great.
Yeah. So cross-culture training. I said earlier, some people are raised cross-culture. Those are the cross-culture kids called CCK. And when they're adults, they are still CCK because they learned these skills when they were children. Other people, like me, learn it when we're already adults. So this is really very intensive training. My training was 3 weeks, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We were 7 couples. 3 of the couples had their children with them. So we were 14 adults, 10 kids. And training that took place during the night was also including our kids. So an alarm bell would ring, and that meant getting up and going into the big meeting room where we would be confronted with any kind of crisis situation. So it would be written on paper, this is the situation, deal with it. We were filmed, our behavior was recorded, and the day after we had the pleasure of looking at it all together and discussing it. Was not nice. Honestly, if you get me up at 2 o'clock in the morning, well, I'm an adult, I could still, kind of control my behavior and fake it in front of the camera. But my children, you know, they don't fake in the middle of the night, so you have to manage them. They really bring you to where you really are emotionally, to your emotional abilities. So that was the training for aid workers. That's what I mean to say there with the picture. The training also exists for crisis intervention people. It exists for the army, for peacekeepers. And yes, it also exists now for everybody else. Aid workers, army, and crisis intervention people get this 3-week intensive training. And then there is this 1-day training that we have developed for everybody else. I mean, hey, how far can we reach, right? And I don't have the resources to train people for 3 weeks. I'm still a government and industry advisor. I'm doing this by the side. So more than a day is just not possible. But I also think that people who are not to be sent in a crisis zone, you know, it's enough if you discover what it feels like. It's enough if you understand what you feel, what it is, what it means. And then you can practice your whole life. So I promised some more on the aggression reducing or inhibiting mechanisms. Again, this greeting with shaking hands. And then the left image is also greeting. And that's a greeting we're actually born with. So in German, it's called the Augengruß. In English, that would be kind of greeting with your eyes, right? Just try it out. Lift your eyebrows. That's all it is. We are all born with it. Every human person, are there other person? So every person of the world is born with this ability to greet. Pull up your eyebrows. All primates are actually born with it. So again, chimpanzees, orangutans, gorillas, they all greet this way. So next time you go to the zoo, try to make eye contact with the chimpanzee. Sometimes they're too frustrated with all these visitors passing and they won't, but if you stay a little, it will work out. Make eye contact with the chimpanzee and greet. And the chimpanzee will greet back. It's just a born mechanism. Here's another aggression inhibiting mechanism, something you can try out all by yourself. Close your eyes, think of something that makes you really, really totally angry so that, you know, the smoke would come out of your ears next second, and then force your face to a smile. It's really just a muscle exercise. And the moment you succeed to force your face to a smile, you will feel that the anger just dissipates, like a cloud of smoke. It just goes away. Feels really, really good. But good advice though, if you feel so angry in the presence of another person, that person probably feels as angry as you are. So don't smile just then. What I do when I'm in meetings or so, I drop my pen, and when I pick it up from the ground with my head under the table, I do my exercise, and then I can come up with my head again, and I'm clear and relaxed, and I can converse again. Yeah, here's another learned aggression reducing mechanism, which is looks. As humans, we react to looks. We find them attractive or not. But that is also, partly of it is born, but the majority of it is learned. So these are 3 gentlemen from nomads, from the Fulani Nomads who live south of the Sahara. There are about 39 million people. And for special events, the men dress up the way the 3 guys here did, and the women get to choose whom they like the most. For me, that wouldn't work. I'm not raised like this. Doesn't really, you know, trigger my attraction point. but if you're raised to this, it will. So what do we need to do? And then now I'm coming to the end. We do have a problem. Monoculture is a problem. It's a problem because in diversity, it just doesn't work. That's number one. Number two, if we force a child into monoculture, although there's all this diversity around it, we are really seriously harming the child. If we stay in multiculture, we are not resilient. We cannot stay calm. We very easily get very excited. And I mean, yeah, for kids, that's acceptable. For adults, that really doesn't work. So we do need to make the step to cross-culture. And that is the elephant in the room that we have to stop ignoring. We have to look at it and deal with it. Dealing with it, this is also what we are going to do tomorrow for those who will attend the workshop. First, we provide some science. I already did a little bit today. Tomorrow, there's going to be a little bit more. And then comes teamwork. So I'll be carrying you through a few of these shocking events, and you will manage those. The thing we cannot do, what we would do in real life, would be simulations. We can't really simulate online. That would be difficult, but we'll be discussing different ways to deal with situations. And we will be reflecting about how it feels to be in that situation and having to make a choice and hoping it's the right choice and having to be fast in making the right choice. So, and Nick earlier mentioned also Jacques. Jacques and I, we are working together now for 40 years. And these images were taken by a woman who participated in one of our workshops. And she came back a few days later and she said, okay, you know what, Imme, what I really found out for myself is that I am already a very diverse person. And I am not afraid of the different sides of me. So why would I be afraid of the diversity of others? So, and then she started this project where she now invites people to come with a suitcase full of clothes and dress up for different occasions, and then she takes their pictures. And the picture that you see here of me is, yeah, upper left would be here in Germany, upper right is Imme in Iran, lower left is Imme in Madagascar, and lower left is Madagascar, and lower right could be Oman, can be India. I think in China, I would wear it like that too. So yes, no more fear of your own diversity, and then you lose the fear of the diversity of others. That's what I wanted to present today. And I think I'm good in time, right?
You are.
Yes.
That was perfect. That was perfect. Although no, you're not, because I'd like to talk with you about it for like another 20 minutes or so, but that's not going to be possible. I think, you know, I consider we've talked about it before, and I'm a Russian, Icelandic, Jewish, Protestant, American, German, European, and it's, but then there's the other side. Then there's the difficulties of it, you know, where having that feeling in Germany, for instance, if you don't have a mastery of the language, you're like feel like you're not allowed to be a German. And some people would say, well, that's, I don't know, if you have your citizenship, you're a German or something easy, right? But it's not like that if you're not, born into it. It's not that easy. And it seems like it sometimes, like with the language, but or even with my name, very strange, depending on where I was. I've been Nikolai, Nick, Nicholas, Nico, Nikolai, and I've also been forced, I've wanted it to be different, even to feel comfortable. So it's little things. It's little things that have been with me since I was 5 years old, and that's why. And yeah, and this is something that I think there is a need for people, for educators in every field, and yeah, So that's why the first time we talked about it, I was like, wow, why have I never heard of this word before? So.
Well, Nick, what is important is that you really create your own mosaic.
Yep.
From the rich excess of pieces of cultures that you have. Yep. Really, really built with it. So it's not about becoming somebody, and it is not about finding out who you are, but it is really about building yourself and doing it your whole life.
Yep. Yep. Very much. Thank you so much for being here, Imme. And tomorrow you'll be having that workshop at, I think, 4:30 is the workshop. I'm not sure, but everybody has their schedule. I'll be sending it out tonight for all of our participants as well, and they'll see that.
It's in my calendar. It's 2:00. If you want me at 4:00,
it's 2:30. No, then it is. Okay, wonderful. All right, then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
I will. We'll prepare for tomorrow.
Wonderful.
Bye, guys.
Take care, Imme.
Bye-bye.